Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about how I have taken an actionable step I have taken to stop playing Dungeons & Dragons and to begin journeying with Dungeons & Dragons. What do I mean by that? I mean, you abandon the idea of having fun at a table. That's not the point of Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion. You abandon the idea that Dungeons & Dragons is about cutting goblins in half, and you acknowledge that Dungeons & Dragons is powerful, unique, and useful, and you, as a dungeon master, absolutely never allow a single session to go by where a single player at your table has not been fundamentally changed as a person for the better. It is about it is exactly what Joe Manganiello said: using Dungeons & Dragons to transform your own life and the culture around you, right? Stop playing Dungeons & Dragons and start journeying with Dungeons & Dragons. It's a different level of experience, and it is a determined effort to use Dungeons & Dragons to make yourself a better person and make every single person who ever sits at your table a better person. And it has nothing to do with fun. It has nothing to do with friendship. It has nothing to do with frivolity. And it is something that must be pursued and mastered. Right? On Dragon Magazine, Gary Gygax made sure that it said, "Mastering the dungeon and beyond." Right? Like, not just Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, was meant from day one to day now by Gary Gygax to make us better human beings, period, end of sentence. I'm talking about a different level of experience than you have most likely ever experienced at a table, right? And it's just a different level of dedication, different goals, right? So what actionable steps have I taken to do this? And I'm going to tell you the next one. I have DM'd robustly, right? Now, you're like, wait, you're just saying Dungeon Master? Yeah. So let's get into it. So I'm going to tell you something sad right now. Get ready. Here we go. You cannot journey with Dungeons & Dragons without dungeon mastering. And I would love to tell you that there are players who are as dedicated as the best. There are meaningful, useful, powerful Dungeons & Dragons players in the world. There are not. Okay? I'm coming up on 4,000 videos. I've done more than 4,000 videos on Dungeons & Dragons alone over 8 years. I'm a dungeon master. You point me to a single person on the internet who's done 4,000 videos that is dedicating to playing Dungeons & Dragons. It doesn't exist. The Uber player, the Dungeons & Dragons Uber player, does not exist. Okay? In order to understand Dungeons & Dragons, in order to powerfully use Dungeons & Dragons, you have to be a dungeon master. Okay? Now, we're talking actionable, right? At what frequency, right? Well, the optimum frequency for dungeon mastering is once a week. If you are doing it perfectly, you are dungeon mastering once a week, and no more than that, right? You should not be dungeon mastering more than once a week. It's too much, and I'm very convinced that if you start doing that and you are producing more than one session per week, you're not paying attention to your players, and you don't have the power to improve yourself or them. The frequency's too high. What is the minimum annually? You must dungeon master a session each year, without question. If you ever spend a year where you haven't dungeon mastered, you got to go back to Mandalore and bathe in the pools of Mandalore, because you've lost your badge. You're no longer a dungeon master, in my opinion. So no less frequently than once a year, 365 days standard year, and no more frequently than once a week. No more frequently than once a week. Okay. Why is this? And also, if you've only ever played, if you have only ever been a player, and if you ever only plan to be a player, you will never understand Dungeons & Dragons. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm sorry that I don't consider players and dungeon masters equal. They are not. Okay? You cannot understand Dungeons & Dragons without dungeon mastering. This is different. I know people will come up in the comments and say that, but I challenge you. I challenge you. Point me to a single dedicated player who truly loves Dungeons & Dragons, has done something truly significant and committed to it, who has not dungeon mastered. They don't exist. And I watched for it. I watched for it for years, thinking that there would be this secondary, not even a secondary, but a parallel discipline to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm convinced you cannot understand Dungeons and Dragons without dungeon mastery. So now that we know that you have to dungeon master to journey with Dungeons and Dragons, what does it mean to dungeon master robustly? It means that it is transformative. Once you commit to dungeon mastering robustly and to never again in the entirety of your human life allowing a single player to walk away from your table with something as useless, mindless, and valueless as fun, right? And get this, listen carefully. Count it all joy, brothers and sisters of the icosahedron. Okay? There are literally hundreds of D&D commentators who have said for years, and I think it's starting to go away. If everybody's having fun, you're doing it right. And I castigate them. I say you're wrong. I rebuke you. I rebuke you for your foolish advice. Anyone who tells you that about Dungeons & Dragons is a fool. Okay? Here's why. Their greatest achievement is valueless. It is nothing compared to what can actually be accomplished with Dungeons & Dragons. We can learn, grow, change, transform, and improve with Dungeons & Dragons. And if your highest goal is to get oh, I had funny. Who cares? Thank you, next. Right? Like, and that's my point, right? Other dungeon masters' greatest goal is to have everybody at the table have fun and change no one, including themselves. It is repugnant. It is foolish. It is a waste. It is, frankly, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually dangerous. You can be desiccated by it. These types of dungeon masters and these types of games will desiccate you. They will draw out your intellectuality. They will draw out your emotionalism. They will draw out your spirituality, your spiritual nature. And you know what they'll do with it? They'll just consume it like the hot sauce on the taco. They enjoy making you less. Escape it. Escape it. Right? Go over to J.D. If you're doing it, she said it. She said it many. If you're just having fun, you're doing it right. I tell you, she is desiccating you. She is drawing out your intellectuality, your emotionalness, she's drawing out your intellect, your emotion, and your spirit. She's desiccating you, right? And I think she, she just gets a joy from making others less. The same way she got joy when Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves came out, and we had a chance to make a Dungeons & Dragons cinematic universe 9 days beforehand. She said, "Hey everybody, let me tell you right now, Dungeons & Dragons movies suck. I'm going to tell you this 9 days before the movie releases." You think that was an accident? It was carefully timed. You dungeon master robustly. You never allow again. And so when you are determined, when you are declared to make every session powerful, unique, and useful to every single player at the table and yourself, and to allow no one to walk away from a single session without improving themselves, it means you build libraries. It means that you look at every single person who comes in front of you as a component to build a better non-player character. You look at every building to see the exciting details so that the locations you build are exciting and powerful and haunting or inspiring. Life simply becomes an array of visuals, an array of experiences to build other worlds better. This world is just one you live in. I'm talking about a different level of experience. I'm talking about rejecting fun, moving beyond it, and using Dungeons & Dragons in ways that have been barely imagined by most Dungeons & Dragons dungeon masters. It's important. This is a journey, right? And I'm hoping, and I am bushwhacking it down. And I'm hoping one of you is going to follow. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.